Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly, and I do all sorts of videos on my channel. Cooking videos, vlogs, hauls, Disney content, a little bit of everything. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, I hope that you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. Today's video is a collab hosted by Rob and Sumner. I'm going to have their channel linked down below. I'm also going to have a link to the playlist so that once you finish watching my video, you can watch what all my friends made this month as well. The theme of this collab is back to school meals. So they wanted us to put together something easy to prepare to help us get back in the swing of back to school. Now, if you know me, you know that I tend to gravitate towards desserts, and all of my recipes are gluten and dairy free. So, in the spirit of the theme of the collab, let's call this a meal prep for breakfast that you can make at the beginning of the week so that every morning you can just pull a piece out of your fridge or freezer and be ready for the day ahead. You could also use these for like lunchbox snacks. I'm going to be attempting to make Copycat Pop-Tarts. The ingredients are very simple and very few. I am going to be using a stand mixer today because I'm actually recording this between therapy sessions with my kiddo. So time is of the essence for me. But you can use a hand mixer if that's all you've got. You could even just do it with a fork with your hand. It'll take a little longer. It'll be a little bit more elbow grease going into it. But either way, it can get done regardless of having fancy kitchen equipment or not. So let me go ahead and show you the very simple ingredients. It might all be stuff you already have on hand, and then we'll jump right into the method. So this recipe is both gluten-free and vegan, making it dairy-free naturally. And so for the pastry dough, I'm going to need 3/4 cups plus a tablespoon and a half of softened coconut oil. I'm in South Florida. Our AC is always going, and that means that my coconut oil is always completely solid. So I'm probably going to measure it out and then maybe beat it up a little bit to soften it some before I incorporate any other ingredients into it. You also need a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and 3/4 cup of powdered sugar. You can substitute a powdered sweetener if you want to make it a little bit lower carb. That's up to you. I'm going with the real stuff. 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 2 cups of gluten-free flour. I always use Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1. It's my favorite gluten-free flour. I find that it has the best texture for my baked goods, and it also doesn't have like that funky metallic aftertaste that I sometimes get with other gluten-free flours. But you use whichever one you enjoy, whichever one you have on hand. You're also going to need 5 to 10 teaspoons of water. The reason it's so vague is because it really depends on what gluten-free flour blend you're using. Some are going to require a little more water to get to the texture that you want in your dough. Some are going to require a little less. So I'm going to eyeball it. I'm going to let you guys know how much I use, but keep in mind that if you're not using this exact bit of ingredients, yours might differ. The filling, very, very simple. 3/4 cup of strawberry jam. You can use homemade, you can use store-bought. I'm using store-bought. I really like this brand. It's clean, it's yummy, it's easy to find. You could also do other flavors if you like, but I'm going for strawberry because A, it's the one that I'm most familiar with from my childhood, and B, I feel like it's a very popular flavor to start anyways, so we might as well go with what people like. And lastly, for the icing, we're going to need another cup of powdered sugar. It's icing, guys. It's going to be a lot of sugar. 1 to 2 teaspoons of water, and then optional pink food coloring. I do have food coloring on hand. I don't think it's pink. Nope, I've got red, blue, and yellow. So I might use some red in here, just for funsies. You don't have to use any food coloring if you don't want to. I might also have some sprinkles in my cabinet that are allergy friendly. If I can find them, I might throw those on there as well because I remember Pop-Tarts having icing and sprinkles growing up. But that's all we're going to need today. Look how super simple. We're repeating a lot of ingredients and they're all basically like pantry staples, so that's going to make it a lot simpler for us. I've gone ahead and preheated my oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and now I'm going to start making my dough. I'm going to pull out my stand mixer and get going. So I'm going to start here with my stand mixer. I'm going to put in my granulated sugar. I'm trying to keep at least one of my measuring spoons like dry so that I can use it for all the sugar measuring. So 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. This is a 1/4 cup measurer. So I'm going to, make a mess. And then I'm going to put in 2 of these to bring us to our 1/2 cup. And now with a different measuring cup measuring, this isn't a spoon, with a different measuring cup, I'm going to come in here to my coconut oil, and I'm going to take 3/4 of a cup of this. So that's 1, 2. The nice thing about this one is that it's collapsible, so I can use that to my advantage as far as emptying the cup out. Oof, I might have like just enough coconut oil for this. There's 3/4 of a cup, and then we also need an extra 1.5 tablespoons. So I'm going to grab a tablespoon. Actually, I might grab a 1/2 tablespoon, and that way I can just fill that one up 3 times. Can't find my 1/2 tablespoon, so I'm just going to use a full tablespoon measure here, and then a 1/2 of the other one. Boom. And now I'm going to start this so that they can cream together. That's what we're looking like right now. The coconut oil and the sugar are one smooth, uniform texture. By the way, this stand mixer, I got it as a gift a bazillion years ago, and I've really only used it like, for sure, less than a dozen times. I hate it because most stand mixers, the beaters are what move and the bowl stays stationary. This is the opposite. In this one, this whole apparatus stays still and the bowl moves, and that's what gets everything mixed up and going, but it's not very efficient. It does, for the most part, get the job done, but would I recommend it? No, not at all. Happy to have it. It does make life a little easier, but would I buy it a second time? Probably not. So there's my 3/4 cup of powdered sugar and my approximately 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I never measure vanilla extract. I just kind of go until it looks right. And now we're going to cream this together until it's all well combined. Next thing I want to do is add in my 2 cups of flour. I have a bag here that I already had opened, so I'm going to try my best to use up as much of this one as I can before I open my new bag. But that's already 1 cup. We need 2 cups total. And 1 more. Yeah, it looks like I'm still going to have to open that new bag. Just barely, but actually, oh, no, look, you know what? I think I had just enough in this bag. It's a little short. What do you guys think? You know what? Let's go for it. If something goes wrong with the recipe, you know it's because I left out that tiny, like maybe 2 tablespoons worth of flour. Just because I didn't feel like opening up another bag. I'm gonna start this super slowly, super gently, so that the flour does not just go poof up into my face like a cloud, but we're gonna incorporate this as well. And once it looks sort of pretty much incorporated, I'm going to add in my water 1 teaspoon at a time. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my teaspoon measuring spoon right here. This cute little heart-shaped one will do nicely. I'm gonna grab a little tiny cup of water. And the reason I'm doing this is because I told y'all I would let you know exactly how many teaspoons I used. We're looking for a shortbread type of dough that will stick together but can be pressed into a pan. I used 8 teaspoons of water total, and I probably could have gotten away with using less because when it was at about 5 teaspoons, it still felt nice, but you can see that when I pick up the dough now, I can clump it into a shape and it will hold its shape, but it's still quite crumbly like a shortbread dough would be, so I think that this is where I feel comfortable stopping as far as the water. So now for the baking, you're going to need an 8x8 pan. I'm using this flimsy disposable thing because I just realized I lent out my glass pan to my mom and she still has it. So disposable it shall be for today. Because I'm using the flimsy disposable, this step is probably extra and not necessary. But the instructions say to line it with parchment paper so that the finished product is easier to pop out later. Like I said, this is a flimsy little disposable nothing, so I could probably just plop it out and it'll be fine. But just in case, I got some parchment paper and I crumpled it up. And this is my favorite way of doing this because once it's crumpled up, it's a lot likelier to hold on to the shape, as opposed to if you were to try to do this smooth, it would just pop right out. So now what I am going to do, I'm going to release my dough from its prison first of all, and I'm going to take half of this dough, roughly, right, because I don't know what exactly half of it is, but let's like divide the bowl down the middle. We're going to take this side of it here, and to the best of our ability, we're going to mash it into the pan. Remember that our oven should be preheated at this point already to 325 degrees Fahrenheit in preparation to receive our Pop-Tarts. So that looks like about half. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of smash it down so that it fills every bit of space on the surface here, but also so that it's as even as possible. We don't want bits that are too much taller than other bits because then it's going to bake unevenly. So that feels good to me, and it's definitely holding its shape. So I think we achieved a really good texture here. Now I'm going to take my 3/4 cup of strawberry jam and I'm going to apply it over this first layer. I'm going to take a spoon here to help me properly measure this out. So there's 1/4 cup. Two 1/4 cup, or half a cup as it were, and 3/4 cup. And with that same spoon, I'm going to go ahead and spread this out. Once again, we're looking for as even a layer as possible. A, so that the entire situation has good coverage, but also B, so we're not left with blobs of jam in any one piece and then nowhere near enough jam somewhere else. It's never going to be perfect because we're not machines, right? This is an at-home recipe made by a human person. So it's never going to look exactly like the Pop-Tarts from the package, but we certainly can try our best. Okay, that looks pretty good to me, even-wise. Now I'm going to release my bowl here and I'm just going to pour out everything else. I'm going to do my best to kind of form it while it's still in the bowl though, because it's going to be harder now that the jam is down to kind of pack it in, right? I don't want to smush the jam into the bottom layer. I want the layers to remain distinctive. So I've done what I can to kind of make the dough uniform before it comes in here. And now I'm going to spread it out. And then I'm going to do my best to gingerly, but still as thoroughly as I can, press this into an even layer. I'm really not expecting this to be perfect, but we're certainly going to try, right? Something else I could have done, this is not in the recipe, but I could have done it maybe, is I could have formed both layers like I formed the bottom one where I pressed it into the pan, into the parchment, and then maybe lifted out that first one, put in a new parchment paper and did it again. And I could have maybe stuck it in the freezer for 15-20 minutes, and then it could have been for sure a proper like entire piece of dough that didn't have any sort of like little divots in it or like, but you know what, it's fine. Like I said, it's homemade, it's rustic, it's gonna be good. So I'm gonna actually put another like steel pan under this to give it a little more structure, make it easier for me when it's really hot to take it out of the oven later. And I'm going to stick it into my 325 degree oven for 35 to 38 minutes until it's golden brown. The time, as always, is going to depend on your oven. I have an older oven, so it might need to go for even longer than that. But once it's finished and it's all golden brown, I'm going to bring it out and I'm going to let it cool completely before we move on to our last step, which is creating the icing and putting it on top. This actually took about 45 minutes for me, and the last 5 minutes I bumped the temperature up to 350 instead of the 325 it was at. But it's finally golden brown and it's firm to the touch, So now I'm just going to leave it. I'm thinking I might leave it for a whole hour actually, because I want it to be completely cool before I ice it. If it's even a little warm, the icing is going to kind of melt and just soak into it. So because I want it to sit at the top like an actual Pop-Tart, I'm going to let it cool all the way down before I even start making the icing. It has now been, I'd say, an hour and a half. Everything is completely cool. So I've got a little bowl here. And hopefully it decides to stay in focus because it keeps switching back and forth. But I'm going to add to my bowl 1 cup of powdered sugar. I have 1/3 of a cup measuring apparatus here, so we're going to do 3 of those. And then I'm going to add to this 2 teaspoons approximately, maybe slightly less, of water. You could use non-dairy milk if you'd like. You can use regular milk if dairy is not a concern for you. But we're just going to go ahead and use water because it's something that you definitely have on hand. So there we go. And while we're here, just for funsies, let's go ahead and put in, I don't know, what do you think? 3 drops of red food coloring? I think that should be enough because I'm not quite going for red. Pink will do nicely. I don't know if we're going to achieve pink, but let's just do those 3 and we'll see what happens. We're going to give this a mixy mix. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot of water, especially compared to the amount of sugar. But first off, you'd be surprised at just how little water it takes for a vast quantity of sugar to become something entirely different. And also, we don't want something super, super runny. We do want this to set up as an icing would. However, that being the case, I do feel like that was not enough water. I'm going, I'm mashing, I'm crumbling, and we're getting something, but we're not really getting a whole lot. So I think I'm going to, I might regret this, but I'm going to add another teaspoon of water. And something like that. Mix, mix, mix. Starting to feel a little bit like cement, which may or may not be what we're going for. I'll let you all know in a minute. We're definitely getting pink though, or pink adjacent, which I like. Yeah, there are some bits of the sugar that really absorb the water and are becoming almost like grout-like, and then there's other bits of the sugar that have not absorbed any water and are still very much in their powdered state. So again, I might regret this, but I'm gonna add in just a teeny tiny bit more. I'm just looking for something spreadable, and maybe I'm wrong for doing that. Maybe you don't want spreadable here, but it's just what makes sense to me because I don't want the icing to rip up the lovely situation we have going for our Pop-Tarts. So I don't mind if it's a little crumbly, but I certainly don't want it so firm that it just doesn't spread whatsoever. Okay, I'm gonna add in a little more water. When it's all said and done, this is probably the equivalent of like 2 tablespoons of water. The reason that I am adding more water is because the recipe just says add water in 1 to 2 teaspoon increments until you get a texture you like. And I am still not there. It also says spread the icing over the top of the Pop-Tarts. And the way that it was looking before, there was no way I was going to spread that on anything. So this is not super smooth. I could have sifted the powdered sugar and it could have given me a smoother, more impressive result, I guess, texturally speaking. But this is definitely spreadable now after my 2 tablespoons-ish of water. And I feel good about that. And I'm also really, really liking the color. So now I'm going to drizzle some of my pink wall paste here over the top of my Pop-Tarts. And hopefully it remains pliable enough for long enough that I'm able to spread it out some. Doesn't seem to be complying very much, but the good news is that I think that this is definitely going to dry down to a proper Pop-Tart icing consistency, and that I very much like. It also seems like we're not going to have enough to do the entire thing. Maybe if I'd done this while they were still warm, we'd have a different result. But like I said earlier, I didn't want to risk it just kind of oozing into the Pop-Tarts and just melting and becoming something it's not meant to be. I wanted it to be very distinctively iced. There we go. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm remembering that typically strawberry Pop-Tarts have a white icing. But you know what? This is more fun, certainly more pretty. And the way I'm looking at it is, if you decided to do this with different fillings, let's say you wanted to do like a brown sugar cinnamon, or maybe you wanted to do blueberry jam, raspberry jam. You could do, ooh, they have like chocolate ones. There's a dairy-free Nutella. I'll link it down in the description box. I've used it for other recipes in the past, but you could even do like a Nutella filling for this. And something fun you could do is just make it a different frosting color for each of the varieties, so you could keep track of what's what if you are meal prepping this and you're planning to keep some of them in the fridge or the freezer. You could also use some like chocolate sunflower butter if you wanted an allergy-friendly version of the Nutella without any nuts in it. Just adding some sprinkles in here just for funsies, again fully optional, but that looks really, really nice to me. Ta-da! As usual, I always say you're not going to trick anybody into thinking this is a real Pop-Tart, but is it going to hit the spot all the same? Very, very likely. So I'm going to cut this into 9 equal-ish portions, and I am planning to freeze these so that I can pull one out whenever I want a little treat. Got icing all over the place here. It's okay if I'm touching it like this because I'm the only one that's going to eat these. If you're cooking for a crowd, maybe don't be so handsy with it all. I'm going to grab a corner piece just because it's here so we can give it a taste. We can look at the inside. That looks very nice. You got the icing drip. You've got the layers. We'll give it a taste. There's the jam. I will say the coconut flavor from all the coconut oil is very dominant here. So if you're not a fan of coconut, just be warned. And for sure you're not going to convince anybody that's a real Pop-Tart. But all on its own, without comparing it to what it's supposed to be, quote unquote, these are delicious. Alright friends, there you have my recipe for my vegan and gluten-free Pop-Tarts. These are very tasty. I'm going to individually wrap each of them in saran wrap and then put them all into a freezer bag, into a Ziploc. Stick them in the freezer and pull them out whenever I want a nice little treat. I'll probably put it in the toaster oven to warm up, and that should be really nice. I really like the recipe and I am looking forward to making different varieties. If you'd like me to share those with you, let me know, and maybe I'll make like some short form videos about the different ones I come up with. And if you decide to try this recipe for yourself, I'd love for you to come on back and let me know how you like it. I want to thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll please give it a big thumbs up. I'd also love it if you would subscribe and click that notification bell because I post at least 3 times a week and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!